Can I have some yummy bread?
Hi, I'm Jimmy, and today I'm going to show you how I make focaccia bread. Just to give you a quick ingredients rundown. First thing is your flour. This is 500 grams of strong white bread flour. I'm pretty sure you can also use plain flour with focaccia bread, not with other bread, but focaccia bread. Some people prefer that, so that's fine. Water. This is warm water. It's come out of the hot tap. It's a bit more warm than you'd want to wash your hands with. Not quite as warm as you might do your washing up with. It's important, it's about that temperature. That's what we're going to do next.
How much?
325 millilitres, which is approximately 1¼ cups. This is 5 grams of yeast, instant yeast, dried yeast. Might come like this. Might come in these funny little sachets, or it might come in a massive pack like that. It's all the same stuff.
Muchachas.
Then we've got 10 grams of salt. Your salt does want to be ground up, so this stuff is really thick. The crystals are really thick. That's no good. So we'll just grind that up. This has got some dried rosemary in it, but that doesn't really matter. But we'll grind all that up in a minute.
Can you use other kinds of salt, like flakes?
Yeah, if at this stage, the salt that you need must be really fine. So if it's not the really super fine stuff, you're going to need to grind it up. It's come out of a grinder, I'm sure it'll be fine. Tiny bit of honey, a tiny bit of sugar, not much, and at the end, you're going to need some rosemary and some flake salt as well. But yeah, this is rosemary from the park. So the first thing you're going to do is activate the yeast. So that's why we've got this warm water. Going to pour the yeast on top of the water. And then we're going to feed it just a little bit of honey. And you're looking for a good squirt. It's going to make it taste really nice. And I'm sure this isn't necessary, but we're going to put a little bit of sugar in as well. I think you can probably just do one or the other, but anyway, never seemed any harm putting a little bit of sugar into something, I think. So there's a little bit of sugar, good squeeze of honey, and that we're going to leave for about 5 to 10 minutes. We'll come back to it. What you're going to want to see is a load of froth on it, and just before we leave it, we will give it a quick stir, just to stir in the honey and the sugar and let that dissolve. And at the moment, you're just going to see some little bits on top. Slow down in a second. But we'll come back to it in about 5 or 10 minutes time. You're going to want to see that really starting to create loads of foam on top. And that's when you're going to know it's ready. So in the meantime, we'll grind up the salt. Quick grind, and we've now got super fine salt, and there are some little bits of dried rosemary in there as well, and that's completely fine. So add that to the flour. I have forgotten one ingredient, which is perhaps the most important one in focaccia bread, and that is olive oil. So don't forget your olive oil, we'll need that in a minute. So now we're going to just mix the flour and the salt. It was 10 grams of salt. I don't know if I said that, but if I did, 10 grams of salt. Just give them a little mix together. And then we can go back and have another quick look at our water and our yeast. And you can just see that the yeast is just starting to come alive, and we're getting some bubbles going on there. So we'll just leave that a little bit longer. So just have a quick look at how your yeast is doing. This has been about nearly 10 minutes maybe, and you can see we've got loads of foam on top. Don't move it. And just have a look under here. You see you've got lots of lovely foam. We are nearly there. I'm going to give that another couple of minutes, and then we're going to start. Okay, so your yeast is magically, we've got all this lovely foam on top, looking very bubbly. If you watch it, you'll even see some bubbles coming up. But that yeast is definitely yeast and water mix anyway, is ready to use. So we're just going to pour that into the flour and salt here. And let's get all of that out. we're just going to mix this around, and we're going to be forming our very sticky dough. This is the stickiest bread dough that I've made anyway. Okay, so you've just given your main ingredients, the flour and the salt and the water and the yeast, a bit of a mix, and you've got this dough. And before we go too much further, we are going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil. But the olive oil is so tasty that I think you should be generous with this, so I'm going to add just a little bit more than that. Let's see. I mean, that's probably 2 tablespoons, but the recipe said 1. So we're just going to mix that together. At some point you're going to have to get your hands very sticky, so that might be this point here. Yeah, it probably is. So I'm just going to combine all of that together. And we've got ourselves a pretty sticky dough. Now, at this point, I'm just going to try and spread it. And as you can see, it really doesn't spread, it just breaks apart. Next thing we're going to do is knead it. You're going to knead it for overall about 10 to 15 minutes. This is really easy to knead. If you start doing breads with wholemeal flours or anything like that, kneading is much harder. So this is a really good one to start with. So you just take your dough out of your bowl, get all of the bits out, and then pop it onto this work surface, which I have cleaned. And you knead it, and to do that you just kind of stick it down, get your left hand, assuming you're right-handed, and put your fingers like that and shove them in about a third of the way up, and then with your right hand or your strong hand, let's get that out of the way, you're just going to push it up, and you're just trying to stretch the gluten out. So kind of like that, and then you roll it back and you sort of twist it round, and then repeat, and each time you come back you just try and twist it back so you're not stretching it in the same direction every time, and do this for about 10 minutes. The more you knead it, the less sticky it becomes. So it becomes a little bit easier. It's still a pretty sticky dough, this one, but just keep going. Okay, so I've been kneading for about 5 minutes now, and it's really sticky, as you can see. And I can stretch it, and it's stretching a bit more than it was before, but this is still not yet enough. You want it to be able to stretch so it's thin enough that you can see, you can get light coming through it, and it's sort of as thin as a pair of tights. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. And we're not there yet, but it's definitely getting there. So keep going. Okay, so I've been kneading again for a few more minutes. We are getting there now. You hold it up to the light and just stretch it out. You can see that that's pretty good. So I'm able to stretch it and get it really thin enough so that we've got light coming through. I'm going to go for another minute or two, and then that will be enough. You probably can't over knead it, but you don't want to either, so I'll just do a tiny bit more and see if I can get it a bit better, but if not, that will be fine. Okay, so just kneaded it a little bit more, and let's look at it again. We're now stretching it out, and that's stretching pretty well. That's pretty good. I think it's just broken a bit there, but that's what you're looking for, something like that. So now we'll just put that down. I've cheated and I've just washed my hands, so that's why they look like this. Normally they're a bit more messy. We're going to get some olive oil and a bowl. Could be the bowl you were using before, just a clean bowl. Very lightly, we're going to first of all just oil the inside of that bowl. So I'm just drizzling a little bit of oil around, and then I'll just wipe it up the bowl. This is just to stop the bread sticking. Okay, and just before I put my dough into the bowl, I'm just going to shape it very roughly into a round. It's quite difficult with this dough because it doesn't really hold its shape very well, but we'll do it anyway. It's a little bit better. So just put it on the flat, with the flat side down, and then you want to just pull up from the outside to the center, going around. You do that about 8 times. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will work 100% better with different doughs, but anyway. And then once you've done that, flip it over, and you can put it on the counter, and then you just want to sort of move your hands underneath and move one back and one forwards at the same time. So you're sort of stretching the surface of the dough out a little bit, and that is shaping it into a round. As I said, this is really rough with this dough, but nonetheless, we've got a slightly better round than we had before, and we're just going to very lightly cover this in a bit of oil as well. I say lightly, I really like the oil, so you know, we're always generous with the oil, but there we go. So just cover the surface of the dough with oil. That's just going to stop it sticking when you put it in the bowl. So now in the bowl it goes, and just have a look at how big that is. There we go, like that. And try and remember roughly how big that is.
On the side?
Because we're now going to put it somewhere to prove what it's first proved. And get an old black bin liner. Black is best because it just helps to retain the heat. And we're going to shove the bowl inside there. And just kind of make that roughly airtight. And then I'm going to put this on a sunny windowsill. Don't know if I'll find a sunny windowsill today, but I'll do my best. Or somewhere warm, not outrageously hot, but a sunny windowsill on a sunny day is pretty good, for about an hour, and then we're going to come back to it. Okay, this is the sunniest windowsill I've got, but there are some breaks in the cloud, so maybe it'll get better. But we're going to put it there in its plastic bag, and we'll come back to it later. Okay, so it's been about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. The dough has been on the windowsill in a little bit of sunshine, and
wow,
bigger. That probably has doubled in size, just about. Hard to say for sure, but that's probably enough. So, having done that, we're going to get the next things we need out. Okay, so we're going to be tipping the dough out into the thing that we're going to cook it in. This is about 25 by 35 enamel roasting tin, but anything like that will be fine. So
more oil.
A little bit more oil, yes. We are going to just lightly oil the inside of that. Not too much. It's just to try and stop it sticking too much. So again, just drizzle a little bit over there, and rub it around. That's good. Now you can tip your dough out onto the work surface, and then you're going to flatten it. But I just tip it straight to here. This seems to just save a step. So tip it up, and it's going to stick a bit, so it will. But if you just gently ease it around the edges, it will start to come, and the weight of it will help pull it down. Here it comes. And you shouldn't really be left with any or very much in the bowl. Here it comes. Got it. Okay. Still quite a sticky dough. So at this point, you can do what some people call knocking back the dough, or just deflating it gently. Don't knock it back. Just use your fingers to lightly press it down. And what you're going to try and do now is press it into a rectangle, and press it into all the corners, right into the corners of your bacon tray. And it will it just keeps coming back into the middle. So just keep sort of pressing it down and pushing it right into the corners. Okay, until you have got something a bit like this, and so it's going pretty much right into the corners. It's pretty flat. I've taken most of the air out of it just by pressing it in, and now we're going to leave it to prove again. So put it, get the same like bin bag, which you can definitely reuse as long as it's reasonably clean. And in it goes. And again, you want to put it in the sunlight somewhere, so either the same place, or if the sun's moved, you might need to find a different window. We're going to leave it there for about half an hour for the second proof. In the meantime, about halfway through that, so in about a quarter of an hour, we're going to turn the oven on. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so hopefully your bread's about halfway through its second and final proof. Time to preheat the oven. You're going to preheat it to about 250 degrees, which is, that's usually about the limit of how high your oven will go. If you can't quite get to 250, then that's okay, just go as high as you can. And this step is optional, but you can make a little boiling water bath to just go underneath your bread, and that will just kind of help to create a bit of humidity in your oven. So that is a good thing to do. So if you do that, when you preheat the oven, just pop this in as well, underneath where you're going to put your bread, and that's it. So while your oven is preheating, you just need to get your rosemary and chop it up. I've got this bit of rosemary in our park, so I've given it a bit of a wash as well. And I'm just going to take, you obviously only want the leaves, so I'm going to just take those off. So there are my leaves. You can put anything onto a focaccia. You don't need to use rosemary, but it smells really great, and it's really is the smell of focaccia bread for me. But you could use olives or sun-dried tomatoes, or a mix of all of those things. It would be lovely. We're going to just do rosemary today, so when you've got your leaves, just chop them up quite small. It doesn't really matter how small they are. Don't need to be tiny, so just a rough chop will be fine. I will say that the bush that I get this from in the park is massive, so I wouldn't go pinching it from a small bush, but this one really is huge. So the tiny little sprig, I think,
it's like a hedge.
It's really enormous, and it grows very wildly. So I think it's fine. Right. So after about, did you say cheese? So after about half an hour, maybe a little bit longer. It's not a photo. Your focaccia bread should be ready to go in the oven, almost. So take it out. It will have risen a little bit again. First thing we're going to do is we're going to poke some holes in it. So just with a finger, just poke a load of holes, like this.
Why?
Do you know what? I can't remember why you do it, but let's just say that you do. It certainly gives some little holes for the olive oil to run into.
More olive oil!
Then we're going to sprinkle it with a few things. So we are going to sprinkle it with the rosemary. My friend here is going to do that. Sprinkle it all over Finn, so it's got to get everywhere. That's it. We're also going to sprinkle it with a bit of salt. This time salt crystals are kind of good, so you don't want them to be or you certainly don't need them to be ground up this time, so just do a good generous amount. Now we haven't spread these very well, so if you just wait there, a couple of pinches of salt is probably good. If you wait there for a second, I'm going to see if I can spread this. We don't need any more salt, I've just done that. So let's try and get this rosemary into all the spots where you haven't got it. It's a little bit uneven, isn't it? Not until we've covered most of the focaccia bread. reasonably evenly with. Yeah, you can. Yeah, there we go. Great job. And then finally, before it goes in the oven, it's going to want a good drizzle of olive oil. Be generous with it, but you don't want it to be absolutely swimming in it. So there we go. I'm going to do that. I mean, I like olive oil, so I'm going to be generous. That's probably plenty. Now, just before we put it into the oven, which has just come up to temperature, we're going to just boil the kettle. So the kettle has just this moment boiled. It's really important when you're cooking bread and you've got this oven up at a really high temperature that you have the oven door open for as short a time as possible. So get everything ready. You'll just boil kettle on the side, and your oven is up to temperature. You've got the tray for the water in there already. So I'm going to open it and do this as quickly as I can. I'm going to put the bread in. I'm going to add the boiled water. That's so dramatic. Close that and then get the oven door closed as quickly as possible. Your overall cooking time is 20 minutes. You want to put it in for 7 minutes at 250 degrees. You've got a really hot oven. If your oven isn't so hot, then maybe put it in for 10 minutes at 250 degrees, and then you're going to turn it down for the remaining 13 minutes or 10 minutes to 200 degrees. So overall cooking time 20 minutes, 7 minutes at 250 as well. Okay, so 7 minutes have passed. I'm just going to turn it down to 200, and if you look inside, you can see it's already browning on top. Don't worry, but it will look like that at this stage, and now that you've turned it down,
Yummy!
It shouldn't burn, hopefully.
Look how dirty our oven is.
Okay, so it's had 20 minutes in the oven. Out it comes. It looks pretty good to me. One thing I will say, don't open the oven until your 20 minutes has passed. It's really important when you're making bread. The oven's really hot. It creates a really nice hot temperature through the oven. As soon as you open the door, you let loads of the heat out. So try and avoid doing that. And we're going to just put it onto this wire wrap. Thanks for the accompaniment.
Soundtrack over there.
Focaccia bread is really, really nice eaten warm, but you do have to wait 10 minutes before you cut it because it just will feel
soggy.
A bit soggy if you cut it now. So you've got to leave it a good 10 minutes to cool down a bit before you cut it.
He's changed guitars.
But do eat it. Can be a bit tricky to get out. Thanks for the accompaniment, Finn. So hopefully I've managed to just get it out.
Yummy!
Yeah, there it is.
Wow!
Really hot, so we're going to leave it 10 minutes and then we're going to cut it and we're going to have it for our lunch.
Can I have some yummy bread?
Yes, you can. Here we go.
What kind of bread is it?
Focaccia.
What do you think of Daddy's focaccia?
Yummy.
Here you go. What do you think?
Yum.
Is it delicious?
First I'm going to eat the cheese.